Let's start today's video off with our favorite company, BlackRock. You see, they just received a big setback that can expose their dirty tactics. Now, in order to explain what I mean, let me take you back a few months when the Texas Attorney General teamed up with attorney generals from 12 other Republican-led states to launch a massive lawsuit against BlackRock and other asset managers.
We just filed a lawsuit against State Street Bank, Vanguard, and BlackRock for colluding, buying up shares, large numbers of shares to increase the price of coal by cutting production. They make a lot of money. Unfortunately for consumers, when that occurs, that means that consumers are paying a lot more for energy. And under federal law and some state law, that's illegal. And we were joined by 10 other states in filing this lawsuit today.
They were saying that these asset managers used their unlimited funds to artificially reduce coal production and raise energy prices. They were calling it the climate collusion lawsuit. Now, some of you might still not know just how ruthlessly these asset managers use our money against us. So let me show you a very eye-opening clip.
Everyone talks about BlackRock's $10 trillion in assets, but most people couldn't tell you where their power comes from. And the reason for that is they aren't taught history from a systems level. So let's use Teddy Roosevelt as an example. Everyone knows he was the trust buster, but what people don't realize is that Northern Securities wasn't a railroad company. It was a holding company that JP Morgan used to buy the stocks of other railroad companies. That gave him control over the corporate boards. They appointed CEOs, and those CEOs served his interest. And that's how he accumulated power from a systems level. Well, people give BlackRock their 401k. BlackRock then uses that money to buy stock in major companies. Then they use that stock through a proxy vote to assign their people to the corporate boards of these companies, meaning they get to vote for you. The board appoints a CEO who is responsible to the stockholders and the corporate board, who then demands ESG policies. And if the CEO doesn't play ball, he loses his job and his bonus.
Now, Larry Fink and his lackeys were going all out on ESG, and they were shoving it down the throat of every company they could get their hands on.
Behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. And that's not recruiting, it is development, as Ken said.
And if you're wondering why they were so gung-ho on implementing these environmental policies, well, the answer is simple. Money. And you don't have to take my word for it, just listen to this World Economic Forum banker.
But when we set this up at Standard Chartered in the beginning, it was two prongs. One was we've got to do our bit to do the right thing vis-a-vis our clients because they want to transition to a net zero environment, but it requires massive investment. But two is we make money, right? It's a big business for us. And it's just a big business, and it's a profitable business. So I don't want to sound too mercantilist about it, but we do the right thing and we get paid for it. It's kind of win-win.
You see, at the end of the day, they don't give a damn about the environment. They knew they could use ESG to take over new industries and use all that money the government was spending on so-called environmentally friendly projects.
My investments, through my investments, the most significant climate change law ever, and by the way, it is a $369 billion bill. It's called the we should have named it what it was, but at any rate.
Now, these asset managers tried their best to make sure this case isn't even heard in court. Well, just yesterday, their motion to dismiss this massive lawsuit was rejected, which means BlackRock will be going to court. And that's a huge development because it shows how this case has some merit, and it can definitely expose all the underhanded tricks BlackRock uses to control our economy. Of course, this case is going to move at a snail's pace, but you better believe believe I'm going to keep my eyes on it, and I'll be keeping you in the loop as well. Now, moving on, the next story I want to share is all about Project Bluebeam. I'm sure you remember that so-called alien object that will reach us in November.
Do you hear about that fucking object that's hurtling towards Earth at like 130,000 miles an hour?
No, that might solve all our problems.
Well, it turns out that even congressmen are now starting to take notice of that story. In fact, Representative Anna Paulina Luna has even sent a letter to NASA asking the agency to study this strange object, which is called 31 Atlas. I already told you this reeks, and I mean absolutely stinks, of a diversion. This could very well be the biggest step they've taken towards Project Bluebeam. And since some of you wanted me to share more about this so-called conspiracy theory, here's a famous clip that will tell you the basic principle behind this project.
If enough people believe that something is real, then it is real in its effects.
In terms of the social reality.
In terms of the social reality, in terms of what people act according to their beliefs.
Yeah.
And that opens a question of, really at two levels, perhaps something that we are creating ourselves, perhaps a series of images that we are projecting. I think Carl Jung came very close to expressing that idea in one of his books. Or could it be manipulated purposely by people who have the technology to simulate UFO sightings? And people say, well, of course not. Who would do a thing like that? Well, I would remind you that during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. Which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place. I have personally investigated several apparently genuine UFO cases where there was, in fact, my conclusion, the conclusion of scientists working with me, was that there was, in fact, a manipulation taking place.
As you can see, at its core, Project Bluebeam is all about creating a fake alien invasion or some other kind of catastrophic scenario which will allow certain people to basically take over the control of the entire planet. And it's not hard to see how this can happen. We all know the CIA thrives on creating confusion. This is breaking news. A bombshell Pentagon admission is turning the entire UFO debate upside down. According to a new investigation, the U.S. military deliberately spread UFO lies for decades, not to cover up aliens, but to hide secret weapons programs. Yeah, that flying saucer you heard about? It was probably an early prototype of the F-117 stealth fighter. This was a full-blown disinformation campaign. They planted rumors near Area 51. They doctored photos. They wanted the public to believe it was aliens because that was less dangerous than revealing what they were really building during the Cold War. So just imagine what would happen if all of a sudden hundreds of people see a ship or some other unexplainable object in the sky. It will create chaos, and if there's any footage of such objects, it will be all over social media, creating more confusion. And in that situation, if suddenly the leaders of multiple nations confirm that it's an alien object, people will start losing their minds, and therefore they will be much easier to control. And by the way, something similar has almost happened before. In 1997, thousands of people saw some strange lights over Phoenix, Arizona. Now, so-called UFO experts will tell you those were ships piloted by extraterrestrial beings. Well, if you ask me, I think that was just another test of some technology that can confuse people.
Like, holy crap, look! And it was a perfect triangle just floating across the sky, way up there. Aliens, first thing that I thought.
I saw 6
lights over the airport, an absolute uniform in a V shape.
And something like that can show up again in our skies. So to me, this letter just feels like yet another attempt to legitimize something strange that can happen in the next few months. And if you still don't think that something wild is about to happen, just listen to what JD Vance has said.
Like, I'm obsessed with the whole UFO thing. What's actually going on? What were those videos all about? What's actually happening? I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet. The August recess is in part me going to try to dive to the bottom of the whole UFO thing from last year. So
that's the Vice President of the United States, and if he suddenly starts to tell people that UFOs are real, what do you think will happen when strange objects start crowding our skies? Now, moving on, the next story I want to share is all about Ghislaine Maxwell, because for some reason she was just moved from her Florida prison to a minimum security facility in Texas.
Former Jeffrey Epstein associate and convict Ghislaine Maxwell has been transferred to a federal prison in Texas.
Keep in mind, such facilities usually have a much lower staff to inmate ratio, so there are going to be fewer people keeping an eye on her, and you can be certain there will also be faulty cameras in this comfy prison camp. Now, interestingly, the White House confirmed that Ghislaine has been handed over to the Bureau of Prisons, but people were quick to note that she wasn't showing up on their records for quite a while. And this comes right at a time when the president made these remarks.
I want to release everything. I just don't want people to get hurt. The files were run by some very bad people and very sick people like Comey and Lisa, the whole group, all those people in that office. They ran those files for 4 years. And if they were going to use the files, they would have used it before my election.
First of all, who is going to be hurt by the release of those files? Could it be Peter Thiel, who was Epstein's business partner and has just signed a $10 billion defense contract? He also made yet another surveillance system for this administration. Palantir, the infamous spy tech giant, is building what they're calling, quote, a master database on Americans for the Trump administration. This isn't just data crunching. No, this is merging immigration files, health records, personal details from Homeland Security, HHS, and more to create the largest surveillance grid the U.S. has ever seen. Palantir's past, tied to intelligence ops, predictive policing, racial profiling, and weaponized data against communities. Now they've been handed $113 million in government contracts, supercharged by Trump's March 2025 executive order to wire this machine together. Even insiders, 13 former Palantir employees, are warning this isn't just about security. This is about political targeting, mass control, and a private company holding the keys to your life. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is happening right now. Folks, listen closely and trust me when I tell you Peter Thiel is the most dangerous man in this country. I can make multiple videos covering his shady past, so if you want me to dig into Palantir, feel free to tell me in the comments. Now, going back to Ghislaine Maxwell, it's pretty clear that she's being handed over to some kind of witness protection, which would mean she has cut a deal. And if that's the case, I'm not going to believe a single word she says because it's going to be total BS. Of course, it's also a disgrace to Virginia Giuffre, whose family said this.
She was preyed upon by Ghislaine Maxwell, and we were very shocked and very surprised that they were giving her a voice and giving her a platform to essentially possibly make a deal. She deserves to rot in prison where she belongs because of what she's done to my sister and so many other women.
We're going to end today's video right there. Let me know what you think about all the topics we've discussed, and also what are your thoughts on my Project Bluebeam theory. Feel free to share your opinions in the comments down below. As always, I truly appreciate you taking the time to watch today's video, and I'll catch you in the next one.